Today we're gonna Today we're gonna continue the series on the Crusade, and this one is what was lost in the Sack of Constantinople of 1204. So we're gonna go deep into that and see what go on and ting there. Welcome back and ting and ting and ting. I'm Mr. Giant. We're gonna go ahead and YouTube and simmer and see what go on here.
Over the centuries, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire grew to be the pinnacle of civilization. Its high walls attracted and protected architecture, literature, science, and art belonging to different regions and eras. On April 13th, 1204, the city fell to the crusading force of Enrico Dandolo, and the forces that took it would go on to commit one of the greatest crimes against humanity, as they feasted on the corpse of the fallen empire, wreaking havoc on the most prosperous city in the world. In this video, we will give an account of losses in art and material culture during the sack.
The difference between modern times, I think, and back then, when they seem to, from what it seems, when we got conquer a city, the soldiers just go buck wild and just start taking stuff, and hoarding all the riches and all of that they could put their hands on, that is. In modern times, they sack a city and they take all the resources. So I guess back then it was an immediate gratification of the victory. But in modern times, they think of the long term. How long can we pillage this place? You know what I mean? This is like a continual pillaging of the place, in guise of diplomacy and stuff like that, Correct me if I'm wrong. Hit me up in the comment section. Tell you, but that's what it seems like. You know what I mean? Because they passed certain laws and stuff, and maybe they had those laws back then. The soldiers just didn't follow, and of course they probably didn't persecute most of them. I haven't seen any in history back in that history where they persecute soldiers for doing stuff like that, or prosecute, not persecute, prosecute. But in modern times, it's more organized. You know what I mean? They make it a governmental sort of pillaging of cities and stuff, of the resources.
Of Constantinople. The sponsor of today's video, Magellan TV, is the favorite documentary platform of Kings and Generals. We've been enjoying our Magellan TV subscription and hope that our viewers love it too. Magellan TV is a documentary streaming service run by filmmakers that has over 3,000 documentaries, among them hundreds of historical documentaries. Fans of Roman history will surely enjoy the 6-episode I, Caesar, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire series. We also recommend The Hidden History of Rome and Meet the Romans, as both of these titles provide so much fun knowledge of Roman history. You can watch both anytime, anywhere, on your television, laptop or mobile device, and it's compatible with most devices. Our viewers can now take advantage of an exclusive offer, 30% off an annual membership. This gives you an entire year for less than $3.50 a month. Every documentary we've watched has been worth double that, and there are now 3,000 in the Magellan TV collection. This offer is available to returning users too. Simply click on the link in the description to claim your discounted annual membership today. Support our channel and do that at try.magellantv.com/Kings and Generals. Start your free trial today.
Go subscribe.
As depicted in our previous episode, the Crusaders quartered in 3 different parts of the city, which had by this point sustained heavy damage from 3 separate fires. One of the leaders of the crusade, the Marquis of Montferrat, Boniface, took the palace of Bucolion, where he found all the prominent ladies of the court. Count Baldwin of Flanders took quarters in the palace of Blakeney, while the Doge Enrico Dandolo occupied the Hagia Sophia. Alexios III had left with the entire treasury, and the Crusaders were determined to receive what they were promised by Alexios IV. But having learned their lesson from the infighting that occurred over spoils in Zara, they laid out a plan on how to sack the city.
You can't really take a treasury now, can you? So I guess that's why the metamorphosis into like, let's occupy and take the resources, because you can't really take a treasury. Everything is sort of like, well, everything is going digital now, you know what I mean? So it's not exactly, I guess you can by controlling the whole system, the whole digital system, but They just walk away with the treasury back then, you know what I mean?
The citizens were not to be harmed, especially if they were Latins, and all the gathered spoils would be collected in designated piles within several churches, and then divided equally, half going to the Venetians and the second half to the Crusaders. Every major leader condemned acts of violence and selfishness under the threat of excommunication. Despite these clear
So they did.
instructions, many men turned to savages as they took spoils for themselves, while raping and killing innocent citizens. One particular episode describes a knight carrying loot on his shield, stacked up to his chin. That knight and many others were hanged immediately.
Oh,
One
they
of the
did
primary
prosecute
contemporary
them.
chroniclers,
Okay,
Nikitas
okay.
Choniates, describes an event from which we can draw several conclusions. As he and his wife were attempting to leave the city 5 days after it fell, they saw a young girl who was grabbed by a knight and dragged through the streets until he barred the door of his newfound home with her inside. The act was reported to other knights nearby, who immediately threatened him with death if he did not release the girl, at which point he obeyed. Yet again, we
Honorable
see
man.
division in the Crusader camp, with some choosing to disobey direct orders, but most following them out of discipline, oaths, or fear. But while they did their best to limit violence, their greed rolled over the city, destroying artifacts, monuments, and works of art. The imperial treasury was empty, so the Crusaders began stripping metal ornaments, ivory containers, pearls, and precious stones, melted down chalices and relics, plundered churches, and the stone homes of the rich, which were left exposed by the fire after it devoured the timber
Wow.
houses of the commoners. Around half of the population of the city was left homeless and became refugees, making their way to Bulgaria and the new successor states. The Church of the Holy Apostles, also known as the Imperial Cemetery, which for more than 700 years was the second most important church in the city, was
I tell you the cool thing about watching some of these, like you get the history in school, but it's a gloss over. So if you're in school and you get a history lesson, look up certain things or most of it to be exact, and go do your own research to get the inside. Because me myself watching this realized that they just glossed over the surface in certain things in history. I mean, I was interested in history, but I was mainly in history, in certain history, so I'm expanding my knowledge by watching these videos with you guys. So and you could tell from sometimes when I say something and then boom, they say it right after. It's because they just glossed over. Didn't know the actual insides of it. So if you're in school right now and you get a history lesson or sociological lesson or anything like that, do some digging on your own to get a broader understanding of it. As far as history is concerned, I wish I had done that.
was already ransacked by Alexios III when he was gathering a tribute that was demanded of him from the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI. But that did not stop the Crusaders from breaking into the sarcophagi of the buried emperors, including Constantine, Justinian and Theodora, Heraclius, and many others. The invaders were surprised to find Justinian's body still intact, with no signs of rot. The bodies themselves were untouched, but the precious objects Alexius III didn't dare to touch were taken to the pile of spoils. Every church was ransacked, including the great Hagia Sophia, with its great golden altar,
Wow, no
engraved
respect.
with the colours
They
of
got the
72
churches too.
pearls, cut into pieces and carted off on mules. The
Wow.
heavy load and slippery marble floor caused some of the animals to slip and fall, and before long, the floor of the temple was covered in blood and excrements. The empire was dead, and now the vultures were dismembering its corpse. Countless marble statues and columns were shipped off and sold. The harbour chain that protected the Golden Horn was separated into pieces and delivered to Acca alongside the very gates of the city. Doors, furniture, silk, and other valuables
Man.
were also sold or sent back to the west. The Catholics found no interest in icons, which were not nearly as popular in the Catholic world, so they destroyed or desecrated a vast quantity of them to the dismay of the local populace. And yet, the biggest tragedy was what they did to the numerous bronze works of art throughout the city. Giant statues, symbolizing authority, beauty, strength, and wisdom, were thrown into the smelters and melted down to be turned into cheap copper coins.
Best way to demoralize people and get them to be subservient, destroy what they know. That's just total confusion there, you know what I mean? So, and then you have to make a choice. Keep fighting to keep that culture, that tradition going, and die, because the invading force is obviously more powerful, or assimilate. But a lot of this stuff is symbolism. Look, I'm destroying all that you know. I'm powerful. It's crazy.
Among them were a statue of Hera, charioteers, a man wrestling with a lion, a monument celebrating Axiom, a statue of Aphrodite being handed the golden apple of discord by Paris of Troy, a bronze statue of the she-wolf suckling the founders of Rome, a tetrapylon built by Theodosius with a beautiful facade that depicted birds, sheep, lamb, fish, as well as mythological creatures and figures, with a large bronze pyramid and a female figure that acted as a weather vane showing the direction of the wind. This is just the beginning of the list. Among the lost cultural items was a crocodile with prickly bronze scales clutching a struggling African buffalo in its jaws. The Nile bull, as the locals called it, attempted to break free by biting the crocodile, both killing each other in the process, neither achieving its goal. Another smelted art piece was a large statue that stood at the base of the Forum of Theodosius, depicting the hero of the ancient Greek myth, Bellerophon, as he gazed towards the sun, riding the winged Pegasus, alongside a large bronze eagle with extended wings and a coiled snake in its claws. The latter also served as a sundial, with its wings split into 12 sections, from which the observer could determine the hour of the day. Also lost was a massive bronze sculpture made by the legendary Lysippos, the personal sculptor of Alexander the Great, whose pupil constructed the Colossus of Rhodes. Lysippos created a giant Heracles with a lion skin over him and a club in his hands. His shin was as tall as a man, and a man's belt could go around his thumb. The masterpiece was cut piece by piece and thrown into the fire like all the rest. Sphinxes, sea monsters, and other mythological creatures were also destroyed. For the description of the last notable statue, we turn to the contemporary chronicler. What of the white-armed, beautiful-ankled, and long-necked Helen, who mustered the entire host of the Hellenes and overthrew Troy, whence she sailed to the Nile, and after a long absence returned to the abodes of the Laconians? Was she able to placate the implacable? Was she able to soften those men whose hearts were made of iron? On the contrary, she who had enslaved every onlooker with her beauty was wholly unable to achieve this, even though she was apparelled ornately. Though fashioned of bronze, she appeared as fresh as the morning dew, anointed with the moistness of erotic love on her garment, veil, diadem, and braid of hair. Her vesture was finer than spider webs, and the veil was cunningly wrought in its place. The diadem of gold and precious stones which bound the forehead was radiant, and the braid of hair that extended down to her knees, flowing down and blowing in the breeze, was bound tightly in the back with a hairband. The lips were like flower cups, slightly parted as though she were about to speak. The graceful smile, at once greeting the spectator, filled him with delight. Her flashing eyes, her arched eyebrows, and the shapeliness of the rest of her body were such that they cannot be described in words and depicted for future generations. O Helen, Tyndareus' daughter, the very essence of loveliness, offshoot of Eretes, ward of Aphrodite, nature's most perfect gift, the contested prize of Trojans and Hellenes, where is your drug granted you by Thon's wife, which banishes pain and sorrow, and brings forgetfulness of every ill? Where are your irresistible love charms? Why did you not make use of these now as you did long ago? But I suspect that the fates had foreordained that you should succumb to the flame's fervor, so that your image should no longer arouse spectators' sexual passions. It is said that these Anidae condemned you to the flames as retribution for Troy's having been laid waste by the firebrand because of your scandalous amours. But the gold madness of these men does not allow me to conceive and utter such a thing, for that madness was the reason why rare and excellent works of art everywhere were given over to total destruction. Considering the extensive list of art that was present all over the city, in the Forum, Hippodrome, overlooking the streets and churches, it's easy to see why the citizens of the Empire considered themselves Roman. The Fourth Crusade didn't just demolish monuments, it struck a blow against their identity, severing their ties with antiquity. One of the few bronze works of art that were not thrown into the smelters was the quadriga. These were 4 life-sized bronze-gilded horses, originally sat on the top of Hadrian's mausoleum, before they were moved to the Hippodrome. The Venetians took these horses, cut off their heads, and transported them to Venice, where they were reassembled and put on top of the St. Mark Church, with collars on their neck to hide the cut.
You know, this here make you think, with all the pillaging and stuff that's going on, which culture is which? I mean, I guess in general terms, you could figure out which culture is which, but I mean, how many pieces of certain cultures were stolen from other cultures, which is considered part of that culture in these modern times? That's why being a historian probably is really, really hard, because, you know, you got to figure out, you know, where certain things come from, where it originated from. Was it stolen from that culture, or did people from that culture move to that area and build it there? Was a conflict that created that statue, or was it migration, just simply migration? It's kind of cool to think about, isn't it? I'm enjoying this here.
The brilliant works of art overlooked the city until history once again repeated itself. Napoleon took control of Venice in 1797 and forcibly removed the statues, along with an immense quantity of art from all over Italy. Yet again, gold and silver objects were melted down to pay for soldiers' salaries, but the Chariot of the Gods was placed on top of the newly commissioned Arc de Triomphe before it was returned to Venice following the Congress of Vienna. Along with the horses, St. Mark's Basilica was decorated with the Carmignola, 4 life-size sculptures of the Tetrarchs, and marvelous pillars of Acca. Additionally, Venice also sees the Colossus of Barletta, a massive bronze statue of either Marcian or Leo I, which washed up on the beach of Barletta after the ship that carried it sank. This clearly shows that, unlike the rest of the Crusaders, the Venetians preferred to preserve the bronze statues rather than smelt them and turn them into coins. One theory suggests that the reason behind this was that the Franks considered the great bronze statues to glorify polytheism, making them go out of their way to destroy them for very little monetary gain. But Venice was not the only one that got to bring trophies home. Over the next few decades, many artifacts were shipped off to the west. The head relics and bones of multiple patriarchs and saints, including Andrew, the patron saint of Constantinople, were taken by various cardinals and clergymen. Conrad of Krosigk, Bishop of Halberstadt, was one of the crusaders who sacked the city, and a year later he returned home, enriching his cathedral with several precious artifacts. The blood of Christ, a strand of the Virgin Mary's hair, pieces of the true cross, the crown of thorns, his purple robe, and his sandals, along with other objects attributed to various apostles and saints, several gold discs, and 2 ivory panels. Traditionally, splinters of the true cross were stored in special precious containers, which the Crusaders scattered to Limburg, Trier, Koblenz, Amiens, and Rome, with the largest of them going to Paris. The French city also obtained the mysterious Shroud of Turin, bearing the negative image of a man, leading many to believe that this was the burial shroud that Jesus was wrapped in. Paris received many other great artifacts, a majority of which were destroyed during the French Revolution centuries later. Robert of Clary was a low-born French knight who provided us with a glimpse of the treasures that were lost to us. Not even one person above earth as much as he had lived in this city, would be able to count and tell the riches, because whoever narrated even the slightest about this wealth, about the beauty and precious things that were found in the monasteries, churches, and palaces, and in the city, would appear a liar, and not one would believe him. Another account of one of the leaders of the crusade tells us how the great heaps of spoils were split in half, with the crusaders receiving 150,000, of which 50,000 went to Venice, alongside their own share of 150,000 marks. But this figure does not account for all the precious treasures that were destroyed, melted, sold, or shipped off. In reality, this was arguably the greatest loss of art in human history. When the Western Roman Empire fell, Constantinople became a bastion of knowledge and art, keeping the secrets of both behind its tall walls. The Fourth Crusade opened those walls and spread the spoils all over Western Europe, arguably setting the foundation of the Renaissance. The stone and marble statues were cut, the bronze marvels smelted, the churches and palaces were plundered, and now the Crusaders were preparing to divide the land and elect the first emperor of this new Latin Empire to spread their reign over the remnants of the shattered Roman one. In our next video, we will talk about this partition and the reaction of the local polities to it, including the famous Battle of Adrianople of 1205. So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing it.
Wow, man. No, I guess the destroying of the culture is it's got political gains, and I guess and material gains for those who took all that stuff. It's a vicious combination of greed and politics. Well, anyway, man, I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys enjoyed this with me. Drop some comments down in the comment section about this here. Drop in some little information and stuff. Keep it coming. Go ahead and subscribe to Kings and Generals. They have some good historical stuff on there, and I know a lot of you who watch this with me watch them anyways. But for those of you who haven't, I say go check them out. You know what I'm saying? And thing. In the meantime, you all take care of each other, all right? Let's make this a good world. Cool runnings.